morning, bon dia.
El micro. Ah, ja està.
¿No va? Sí, sí. Good morning, buenos días, buen día. Nosotros desde el Gobierno de Cataluña, estamos convencidos de que los gobiernos regionales y que los gobiernos locales son una pieza estratégica en la lucha contra la mitigación y sobre todo la adaptación de los efectos del cambio climático, ¿no? El cambio climático, que digan lo que digan, está aquí, aunque algunos ayer se entestaron en negarlo, que afecta, los efectos son evidentes, ¿no? Afecta a infinidad de personas, a infinidad de empresas y a la economía de los países que sufren las consecuencias, ¿no? de los fenómenos del cambio climático. Está muy bien hacer diagnosis, describir la realidad, hacer proclamas, pero yo creo que ha llegado el momento de pasar a gobiernos que lo estamos haciendo, pasar a la acción y desarrollar ante los fenómenos descritos programas concretos que la ciudadanía, que los ciudadanos y las ciudadanas lo vean, ¿no? Y que vean que hay una acción decidida, contundente por parte de los gobiernos, en este caso de los gobiernos subnacionales y locales, para implementar políticas concretas. Nosotros reclamamos, y aprovecharemos también la próxima cumbre de la COP en Brasil, para empezar a expresar la necesidad que los gobiernos subnacionales accedan de manera clara a los mecanismos de financiación necesarios para implantar programas que afectan los territorios. Territorios con problemas diferentes, ¿no? Hay que empezar a implementar políticas a veces de cirugía para conseguir los objetivos climáticos que se fijan a nivel global. Financiamiento para poder plasmar estos compromisos, para traducirlo en acciones concretas en el ámbito regional y local. La transición ecológica y las políticas fiscales y presupuestarias, desde mi punto de vista, se han de hacer bajo el principio del repartimiento equitativo para garantizar que nadie quede atrás. Porque a veces uno tiene la impresión de que determinadas políticas fiscales que los gobiernos estamos implementando, y ya fijo también el mío, no acaban de ser mecanismos progresistas, ¿no? En el sentido de progresión, en el sentido de que a veces afectan a todo el mundo por igual, y cuando afectan a todo el mundo por igual, generalmente quien acaba sufriendo las consecuencias de estas políticas fiscales y presupuestarias son aquellas personas con menos capacidad, con menos recursos, y indirectamente o directamente son personas que se ponen al frente o son vulnerables a los discursos negacionistas, de que las políticas climáticas pues afectan a su estatus de vida, que no suelen ser tampoco las mejores condiciones, ¿no? El Gobierno de Cataluña tiene el compromiso claro de que la financiación de las políticas climáticas y de transición lleguen a todos los niveles, a los municipios, al tejido productivo, porque tiene que haber un cambio en el modelo económico y hay que garantizar también la competitividad de nuestras empresas, que llegue también al ámbito científico y a la innovación que nos tienen que acompañar en este proceso de transición. Pero la transición hacia un modelo diferente, nuevo, tiene que reforzar al mismo tiempo, esta es mi opinión, la cohesión social y la cohesión territorial. Sin las personas, sin los ciudadanos y sin las ciudadanas, las políticas de cambio, de transición, no tirarán hacia adelante. Podemos encontrarnos un freno por parte de colectivos muy grandes de personas. Y una política fiscal no pasa exclusivamente, desde mi punto de vista, por subir impuestos, que a veces es la posición fácil. Vamos a subir los impuestos y así garantizaremos las políticas de transición. Algunos impuestos seguramente habrá que analizar, algunos habrá que subir, otros habrá que racionalizarlos. Habrá que hacer impuestos que no vayan a la caja única de los gobiernos, sino que tengan finalidad finalista para aplicarlo a políticas concretas. Pero pasa también por tener criterios claros y fijar prioridades políticas. Es decir, cuando los gobiernos, sean a nivel estatal o a nivel subnacional, cuando hacen sus presupuestos generales, tienen que tener las políticas claras. Y a través de los recursos de la caja general, tienen que implementar políticas que vayan en este sentido. ¿Sentido hacia dónde? Hacia descarbonizar nuestra economía, para facilitar que algunas de las actuaciones se vayan desarrollando de manera rápida. Les pongo unos 10 ejemplos y aquí acabaría mi intervención, de hacia dónde dirigimos desde el Gobierno de la Generalitat de Cataluña nuestras prioridades y cómo orientamos los presupuestos, que yo creo que además tienen una clara vocación de transición en este sentido. Tenemos un plan de vivienda que nos tiene que reportar la Constitución o la creación de 50.000 viviendas nuevas de aquí al año 2030, para garantizar garantizando dos cosas: alquileres asequibles para el conjunto de la población, porque igual que pasa en Nueva York, en muchas ciudades, en Barcelona, en Cataluña también pasa, los precios de alquiler están disparados y hay que hacer políticas en este sentido, pero al mismo tiempo la construcción de estas nuevas viviendas tienen que ser viviendas eficientes, tienen que ser viviendas electrificadas y complementariamente hay que rehabilitar el parque actual de vivienda también bajo estos mismos conceptos. La creación de zonas de bajas emisiones en las áreas metropolitanas para reducir emisiones y al mismo tiempo facilitar la transición de los vehículos contaminantes a vehículos limpios. Eso implica financiar también el cambio, ¿no?, de este tipo de vehículos, teniendo criterio de que hay que electrificar también la flota privada y una inversión muy fuerte en el transporte público, sobre todo ferroviario, y cuando no puede ser ferroviario, cambiando los buses. El ferrocarril no llegará a todas las ciudades, sobre todo las más interiores, pero aquí hay que garantizar que los vehículos de transporte público, buses interurbanos, vayan desapareciendo el combustible desde del diésel, de combustibles fósiles, hacia la electrificación también de este transporte. En los barrios más antiguos del país, no solo de las zonas metropolitanas, sino también de las zonas más rurales, fijando como objetivo la rehabilitación de viviendas, hemos impulsado, y de aquí al año 2030 también, entre los gobiernos locales y el gobierno regional de la Generalitat de Cataluña, un plan de rehabilitación de barrios que movilizará alrededor de 3.000 millones de euros. Implantación masiva de energías renovables. Cataluña es una de las regiones de Europa donde el cambio hacia energías limpias, sobre todo eólico y fotovoltaica, está más atrasado. Estamos a la cola de España, estamos a la cola de Europa, y hay que, de aquí al 2030, si queremos llegar a los objetivos fijados por la Unión Europea, hay que espabilar y hay que correr mucho. A mí no me sirve que el 54 o 55% de la energía eléctrica que consume Cataluña provenga de las centrales nucleares que tenemos instaladas. Hay que hacer un cambio también en este sentido. Fijar, que eso ya está en la fiscalidad del país, y mantener el canon de residuos y el canon sobre el consumo de agua, sobre todo que consuma más agua tiene que contribuir más al mantenimiento del sistema. Estamos discutiendo, entrará en sede parlamentaria antes de final de año, una nueva ley de residuos que contemple también un nuevo modelo de embalajes, ¿no? A consumir. Me parece que ayer en un panel que tuvimos este tema también surgió. Hay que cambiar también el modo de consumo. Y luego un plan que también le vamos a destinar muchos recursos. Estamos en una zona mediterránea donde las sequías pues son evidentes, no ocurre solo en Cataluña, sino en todas las regiones con climas mediterráneos, que pasamos de sequías severas a inundaciones tremendas, ¿no? Pero de aquí al año 2030 también estamos implementando un plan con nuevas infraestructuras para que el 70% de las necesidades hídricas del país no provengan de la lluvia, sino que provengan de la reutilización de agua, de la regeneración de agua, de la desalinización también. Por tanto, toda una serie de políticas encaminadas a adaptarnos al cambio climático, que no necesariamente tienen que subir o tienen que salir de un incremento de la carga impositiva de los impuestos, sino de una reorientación de los recursos públicos hacia este tipo de políticas. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Jordi, Secretary. Okay, so climate transition is one of the defining challenges of our time. I think we all agree about that, demanding unprecedented levels of investment and innovation. While national governments play a crucial role, it is often at the subnational level, regions, cities, and local communities, where climate action becomes tangible and impactful. However, financing this transition remains a complex task, especially for subnational actors who face unique barriers and opportunities. The scale of investment required to achieve decarbonization and adaptation goals is immense and far exceeding the capacity of public budgets all alone. Mobilizing private capital is essential, yet investors often encounter regulatory uncertainties, technological risks, and a lack of tailored financial instruments. Moreover, ensuring that funding reaches the most vulnerable communities and supports a just transition in a persistent challenge. Innovation is urgently needed, not only in technology, but also in financial mechanisms and governance. Subnational entities must navigate fragmented funding sources, coordinate with multiple stakeholders, and overcome limited access to finance. At the same time, social acceptance and local engagement are critical to the success of climate projects. Today's roundtable brings together experts and practitioners to explore innovative tools and strategies for financing subnational climate action. We will discuss on how to unlock new sources of capital, design effective financial instruments, and ensure that the transition is both inclusive and resilient. By sharing experiences and solutions, we aim to empower subnational actors to lead the way in building in a sustainable future. And for doing so, we have a great panelists here with us. Thank you, all of you, for being here and to spend this beautiful morning here in New York with us. Let me introduce all the panelists briefly. First of all, we have Sonsoles Letang. Sonsoles is the current Director General for Environmental Quality and Climate Change at the Department of Territory of the Government of Catalonia. She holds degrees in agricultural engineering and forest engineering and has extensive experience in sustainability, urban planning, and environmental management. Thank you for being here with us. We have Gillian Martin. Gillian was appointed as a Cabinet Secretary for Climate Action and Energy in June of 2025. She is now acting a Cabinet Secretary for the Net Zero and Energy, and she is as well a member of she was elected as a member of the Scottish Parliament in 2016. In 2021, Gillian was appointed as Governor of Health Committee before becoming Minister for Energy and the Environment in 2023 of the Government of Scotland. Okay. Thank you for being here with us, Gillian. Sam Carter. Sam is a founding principal of Resilient Cities Catalyst, as known as RCC. In this role, he serves as RCC's lead on regional resilience building and leads several strategic initiatives, including the California Resilience Partnership and the Mediterranean Climate Action Partnership. So thank you for being here with us. Neil McFarlane. Neil McFarlane works as a climate director, special projects at South Australia within the Department of Environment and Water, which is a government company founded in 1954. Prior to that, he has been climate director, special projects in the Department of Agriculture, Water and Environment. Neil has worked as well in the Green Climate Fund as deputy director and a climate adaptation coordinator, and in the United Nations as a global regional coordinator and national implementation on disaster risk reduction chief. Thank you for being here with us. And finally, we have Alessandro Cantoni. Alessandro is a regional councillor of Lombardy in Italy and currently serves as a president of the Permanent Commission of the Regional Council, which oversees environment, energy, climate, and civil protection. With a diverse professional background in the private sector, he has combined business experiences with a strong commitment to public service. Thank you for being here with us. So, as I told you before, we will have 2 rounds of questions. You have 5 minutes. Please try to stay in this frame of 5 minutes. If you don't, I will try to make a signal, something, okay? Or maybe I will yell, I don't know. Yes, please try to be sure. We have a plane to catch, by the way, so it's in our best interest as well. Anyway, the first of the rounds we will talk about financing mechanisms and sources. We will start with Catalonia, with Sonsoles. Okay, in designing and managing the Catalan Climate Fund, how do you ensure you have a fund? Catalonia has a fund, climate fund. How do you ensure that a region can generate sufficient and predictable capital for climate action, while guaranteeing the vulnerable or smaller municipalities are not left behind? Sonsoles.
Okay, thank you. Yes, first of all, it is necessary to give you some remarks about our climate fund to understand it. So the climate fund of Catalonia is a public tool, a public instrument created by our climate change law. So it's inside our law. It is financed with resources that come from environmental taxes, from the tax on carbon emissions, from vehicles. This is the most important part, but also a little part from the tax applied to activities that have effects into the environment. And so the objective of the climate fund is also defined inside our climate change law, and is to consist in using these funds in mitigation and adaptation projects, identifying actions that can have a real impact on reducing carbon emissions, and also on resilience to climate effects, and to protect ecosystems and communities, the most vulnerable ones. The areas of mitigation and adaptation projects are also defined into our climate change law, and we can allocate money in this sense in several areas of energy, mobility, also nature, communities, housing, biodiversity, water. We have a very long article for this. As the climate change fund is especially sourced by incomes that come from carbon taxes of vehicles, the more efficient the vehicle fleet are, the less incomes will be collected. So we can ensure finance now and the next few years, as long as we still have gasoline powered vehicles. So it's an incoherence, but it's like this. And at present, less than 10% of the vehicles of Catalonia are electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles. And the last year, the purchase of electric vehicles increased by 20%. So our tax and our incomes are reducing. And from the 2021 to the present, we have allocated a total of 581 million euros for 81 adaptation and mitigation projects, and some of them are still under development. So we can ensure the money like this until now with the current situation. And regarding the second question, a mechanism to lower barriers for small actors, we use an internal procedure to guarantee that vulnerable and smaller municipalities are not left behind. So, in this sense, the management and orientation of the fund's priorities are decided within the Interdepartmental Commission on Climate Change, which acts with technical support from the Climate Fund Commissions. The Climate Fund Commission is the body that approves the project. So this commission includes representatives from various departments: economy, energy, transport, housing, water, biodiversity, several, and holds every 3 months, and the functioning and the composition of the Climate Fund Commission are regulated by another law, not the climate law, it's an additional law, okay? So at present, the priority areas of actions of Climate Fund that have been determined include research and innovation, support for companies, local support for local governments, citizen participation, and singular specific projects that with a special impact. So I would want to give you some example, one public, one private. From public, for example, one very, I think that with a lot of impact, we have granted 500 municipalities. In Catalonia, we have 1,000 municipalities. So we have granted 500 municipalities to take actions on mitigation and adaptation. We have given them 100 million euros, and we have seen how municipalities are doing climate shelters in public building, also in green areas. They are installing renewable energy systems a lot, or building efficient water infrastructures, among others. And from the part of private sector, to promote private investment, we have another project, for us very interesting project. We are doing with money from climate change, from Climate Fund, we have assumed part of the interest of a loan offered by the Catalan Finance Institute, that is our public bank, or public Catalan bank. This bank is offering this to private sector, but to medium and small companies to do investment on mitigation and adaptation. And the interest of this banking product is only 1.5 because we are putting money to lower the interest. And until the moment, in just few months, since its launch, companies have already requested 67 million euros to do investment on mitigation and adaptation. So this is for the private sector. So in summary, the Climate Fund operates as follows. First, we collect environmental taxes every year that we put into the Climate Fund. Second, the department that acts as a members of the Climate Fund Commission propose projects and actions when we hold these commissions every 3 months. Third, the projects and actions proposed are approved by all the members of the commissions. And finally, the commission monitors the approved projects and actions until they are finished. That's all.
Thank you, Sonsoles. You used 7 minutes, so at the next round you will have 3 only.
Okay.
Okay.
Vale.
So
Sorry.
have this in mind, huh?
Yes.
Okay, now next question for Scotland. Scotland was the first global North government in the world to commit dedicated funding for loss and damage. How can devolved state and regional government climate finance can be a catalyst for a positive change? Gillian.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to be part of the panel today. Is that microphone working? Can everyone hear me okay?
I think
good?
so, yes.
So obviously I'm going to be talking about our loss and damage fund, and if we can give you some context, in 2012 the Scottish Government set up the world's first climate justice fund. That was to support communities in the Global South, and we wanted to directly acknowledge that the Global South countries have done the least to contribute to climate change, and they are suffering the worst impact. So the fund started off small, but it rose to 36 million over this parliamentary term, so that's 5 years. And it's delivering on for some of the hardest to reach communities in the Global South. This includes rural women who are having to repeatedly rebuild their lives and livelihoods after devastating cyclones in Malawi, for example, young people learning new farming techniques and adapting to extreme weather patterns in Zambia and Rwanda. So at COP26 in Glasgow, we made another important decision to become the first Global North government to commit funding explicitly to loss and damage. And we felt that although it was quite a small pledge of £1 million, but it would send a really strong signal to other governments, particularly national governments, that finance to address loss and damage must be in addition to finance for mitigation and adaptation. And I think it's fair to say that our pledge helped build momentum towards the establishment of the UNFCCC Fund for responding to loss and damage at COP27, and something that Global South communities have been calling for decades, and are still indeed calling for contributions from large economies. But we are committed to being a bridge builder, amplifying the voices of the Global South, addressing the unequal impacts of climate change on marginalised people, and actually being proof of concept that loss and damage funds and the way that we're delivering is actually making meaningful difference to people's lives and building resilience and allowing people to build back their livelihoods. We ring-fenced £10 million of our Climate Justice Fund to test different approaches to distributing loss and damage funding, from rapid responses to climate disasters to unconditional cash transfers to support for urban and non-economic loss and damage as well. Actually giving money to people directly, not through lots of layers of administration. And we've been sharing learning from these programmes with other governments and the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage. So, for example, we've learned that if marginalised members of communities, such as women and young people, women with people with disabilities, if they lead in determining the responses, they're likely to have the greatest impact. And we're urging other funders to adopt this community-led approach, not a top-down, you will do this, we know what's best. responding to what their needs are and allowing them to have the leadership in actually deploying the solutions. So I hope that that example shows that how devolved state, regional climate finance can be a real catalyst for positive change. It can be very influential, but it also can, you know, if targeted in the right way, can actually make an actual tangible, meaningful difference. And I think that we're at the start of this fund. I'm always looking at ways in which I can protect it. Obviously, it's government money, but I'm also interested in ways in which we can maybe leverage private finance to enhance the capacity of what we're doing. I think we're at the start of that journey. A great strength of subnational governments is that we can be nimble, we can pilot new approaches, gives us valuable evidence and insights to share. We can show leadership where others maybe don't, and we can make a real difference to communities on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. Okay, let's move now to South Australia. And Neil, what are the main financing instruments that South Australia is using to support climate mitigation and adaptation? How do you leverage state level credit worthiness or regulation to unlock private capital? Because we all know that private capital can be critical in order to achieve the climate goals.
No, and thank you for the question. So our approach is a little bit different. I mean, essentially, there's two sources of finances, public and private, basically taxes and private investors. So we don't have a fund or a separate body of money. What we do is try and integrate all these into investing into the transition. Because the transition to net zero, for us, is not a cost, it's an opportunity, right? That's where the market's going. That's where investors want to go. Therefore, we don't see it as an imposition. We see it as the way of the future where the markets are going. So we have a lot of investors who really are keen to sort of join us on that journey. I'll talk later a little bit what kinds of legislation and plans you need to do that. I will focus on a couple of tools that we do. So in Australia, the national government collects all the taxes. It has a GST, goods and services, and income. Okay, and that collects most of the money. At the subnational level, we have some taxes, very, very small, emergency management, emergency levy, a bit on cars, but not much at all. So when we want to build a solar panel, a battery, a transport system with EVs, manufacturing that's clean, we need to partner with the Commonwealth, the small amount of state money that we have, and attract private. So we have the three always giving a component of money and resources into a project. So what we do is bring all those partners together and work out what we want to do. And if it's in energy in particular, because that's got value and people are paying for their energy, you're gonna get a lot of interest from the investors. And it's about making that deal, which is good for the consumers and good for the investors, and you go forward. So we've now got 80% of our energy from solar and wind, the second best in the world after Denmark. 80% of our energy is coming from those two renewable sources. So that's what happened then, is that the whole of the manufacturing now is changing. Our whole grid is clean. So all the power they're connecting in is now clean and green, pretty much. By 2027, it will be 100%. In 2030, it will be 150%. We will be selling it out. Okay, so it's a huge opportunity, and this is why we're getting investors knocking on the door all the time. So we don't have any problems about attracting investment. It's more like, okay, where do we channel all that money? I will talk about one mechanism that we do have. So we have a sustainability bond. So we created, and you need, I'll talk about this in a minute, but you need the basics to do that. You need, good plans, good ledge, good strategies, and sort of telling the public what you're doing. But you also need to get a credit worthy from all these international financial institutions about getting the credibility of that bond. And our bond has created tens of millions of dollars, and we're spending that tens of millions of dollars along with that, all that other private and tax money into, and I'll just give you a little list here of just the types of things we're doing. Just having a look at my figures here. So we've got 25 billion at the moment that's allocated towards 360,000 solar panels, 30 wastewater treatment plants, 27,000 kilometres of water mains, 7 desal plants, housing high schools and public high schools that are becoming green and clean in themselves. So we use all that investment into a clean and green future. So that's the way we attract financing, and that's the way how we deliver at the moment. So I'll leave it there, save you some time, and then come back about the other areas that we work on.
Thank you so much, appreciate it. Congratulations for the 80%. And I wonder if the rest of the regions in the panel will be that optimistic about attracting public investment. Not always is that easy, but it's a good thing that is happening in South Australia. Okay, let's move to Lombardy, the last one of our regions. Lombardy is one of Europe's most industrial and economically dynamic regions. How are mobilizing both public and private resources to decarbonize such a complex and different economy? Could you share how you leverage EU structural funds, national recovery plans, or regional instruments to support climate projects, especially in some sectors such as transport?
Grazie Mark, grazie a tutti, ringrazio ovviamente anche per la traduzione dall'italiano e grazie per questi 500 minuti, ho notato che understand anche il mio inglese. Allora, indubbiamente all'interno di questi giorni importanti passati qua a New York stiamo partecipando a tanti eventi, uno dei più importanti sicuramente questo, quindi complimenti al governo della Catalunya che ha voluto fortemente questo incontro e noi fortemente abbiamo voluto partecipare, quindi grazie ancora. Il sentire comune all'interno della Climate Week, per cui durante gli incontri fatti, è la preoccupazione che tante parole stiamo spendendone, ma poi alla fine bisogna arrivare ad atti concreti. Atti concreti che però qui stiamo dimostrando che gli Stati stanno mettendo in gioco con azioni veramente concrete. Cosa sta facendo Regione Lombardia? All'interno dell'Italia Regione Lombardia, se vogliamo, è un piccolo Stato nello Stato, 10 milioni di abitanti e 3.500 piccoli comuni, comunità locali che hanno bisogno di avere fondi, di avere sostegno e di avere supporto da parte del governo centrale di Regione Lombardia, di cui ho l'onore, ma anche un po' l'onere, di farne parte. Allora cosa abbiamo fatto? Una cosa la più semplice ma allo stesso tempo anche complessa che ci è venuta in mente: creare una legge sul clima, a climate law. Perché? Perché dovevamo dare dei parametri chiari, precisi, che venissero seguiti e dal mondo del privato ma anche dal mondo del pubblico. Questo cosa succede? Che però che non è sufficiente fare una legge e trasferire alle comunità il problema. Io ho deciso come dovete fare e adesso arrangiatevi. No, non basta. Dobbiamo assolutamente seguire questo percorso e lo facciamo come? Ovviamente attivando una serie di bandi con dei denari che derivano e dall'Europa, a partire ad esempio dai fondi PNRR, piuttosto che dal nostro governo centrale, ma una grande parte derivano proprio dai fondi di Regione Lombardia. Tenete conto che Regione Lombardia, che ha un bilancio di 34 miliardi all'anno, 26 sono spesi per la sanità, per cui noi spendiamo una percentuale altissima per il mondo della sanità. Detto questo, però, ci rimangono alcuni miliardi, se Dio vuole, che possiamo destinare anche ad azioni dedicate al mondo e del privato e del pubblico, facendo in modo attraverso questa legge che ci sia anche un'intersezione, una combinazione, un mix fra pubblico e privato, affinché chi ha la consapevolezza, la conoscenza, la tecnologia dal privato possa trasferirla verso il pubblico che possa renderla quindi efficace per parlare di sostenibilità, per parlare di diminuzione dell'inquinamento, per parlare di tutti questi motivi che oggi ci hanno portato a questo tavolo. Il nostro obiettivo sono le emissioni zero entro il 2050. È difficile, è molto difficile, dobbiamo valutare anche gli aspetti economici e sociali. Una legge di questi giorni ci imponeva che le persone con macchine, automobili, diesel, Euro 4 non circolassero più, ma significava anche creare un problema, un danno per famiglie che non possono cambiare l'autovettura e comprare un Euro 5 e a salire. Quindi abbiamo dovuto trovare delle formule che andassero incontro anche dal punto di vista sociale a questa necessità, a questo bisogno. Quindi abbiamo detto sicuramente l'obiettivo è la riduzione dei consumi, per cui finanziamenti ma anche a fondo perduto per le famiglie, soprattutto quelle più bisognose, per cambiare ad esempio il sistema di impianti di riscaldamento che ovviamente provocano una forte pollution, una forte inquinamento, piuttosto che dei denari, dei fondi per chi vuole appunto cambiare e deve cambiare l'autovettura. O per chi ad esempio nel mondo delle costruzioni edili farà nuovi impianti, nuove costruzioni, ma dovrà seguire tutti quelli che sono dettami che arrivano dalla nuova legge. Ma ecco che noi li aiutiamo, quindi ti diamo la strada, ti indichiamo la via, ma ti diamo anche gli strumenti, le agevolazioni per raggiungere i tuoi obiettivi. Noi abbiamo aria, terra e acqua che senza di questi fattori ovviamente non possiamo vivere. Un altro tema che stiamo trattando fortemente in questi giorni sono le sostanze perfluoroalchiliche, i cosiddetti PFAS presenti nell'acqua, per cui ogni giorno purtroppo le nostre tematiche si arricchiscono di nuove problematiche che devono essere gestite e noi pensiamo che attraverso questa legge si riesca ad andare verso questa strada che ci potrà portare a un fortissimo miglioramento e alla riduzione dei consumi, parlando veramente di una regione ad emissioni zero entro il 2050. Quindi si parla molto di green economy, si parla di riduzione di emissioni, si parla di produrre energia da fonti rinnovabili. Anche su questo campo stiamo muovendoci con grande attenzione, finanziando, aiutando e il pubblico e anche il privato che intende perseguire la strada verso nuove fonti rinnovabili. Sull'idroelettrico abbiamo raggiunto forse più del 100%, sulla parte eolica non abbiamo, nonostante siamo all'interno del Mediterraneo, non abbiamo così tanto vento. Non gridare, sento gridare Mark da lontano, dobbiamo ovviamente impegnarci molto sul fotovoltaico e non solo, e quindi questa è un'altra strada che stiamo aiutando con finanziamenti importanti anche attraverso questa legge. Grazie Mark.
Grazie Alessandro, thank you. Well, one of the challenges, of course, is how to balance social needs and climate goals. Huh? Okay, let's move now to RCC, which has a lot of experience in working with philanthropy. We would like to know a little bit more about that. What are, from your point of view, the most catalytic role foundations can play in financing the ecological transition? Can philanthropy go beyond seed funding and help de-risk projects to attract private and institutional investors?
Yeah, thanks Mark for the question. And thanks everyone for the comments. There's so much cool leadership and great projects going on at these different regional governments. And yeah, I was asked to kind of speak about philanthropy, and I should note that I spent the greater part of the 2010s at the Rockefeller Foundation, where I was the managing director for their resilience program. So I'm going to be bringing that perspective to the table, along with the public philanthropic work that we do at Resilient Cities Catalyst. So we didn't hear much about philanthropy. This is all public dollars, these various funds. And in part, that's probably because philanthropy in the United States is quite different than philanthropy in other parts of the country or other parts of the world. And I should note that, you know, the history of philanthropy is really one of tax evasion. You know, it's wealthy people that didn't want to pay taxes to government in the face of, you know, very high tax rates in the early 20th century here in the United States. And these institutional foundations were set up by these very wealthy people to basically act like governments, you know, to do the kinds of things that government would do because they felt they could do it better than their government. And so it's a very different paradigm than in Europe or with development finance, which we also heard a little bit about. It's really privately controlled money that gets deployed based on the decisions of a private organization. And that's kind of a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing in the sense that there's enormous flexibility in how that funding can get deployed, way more flexible than your $500 million that you've raised with your fund, where there's like public accountability and there's legislators that probably call you into their office and say, why are you spending the money on this? And there's political risk to that. And so that means that it can be deployed more rapidly. It can be deployed with less public scrutiny and less restrictions. But it's also not accountable to kind of a higher public mission necessarily. And then the other negative thing about that is there's not a lot of incentive for foundations to collaborate. So in fact, most foundations spend most of their time trying to think about how can my foundation's brand kind of, you know, stand out from the crowd. You know, if I'm Ford Foundation or Rockefeller Foundation, I want to have a distinct strategy and a distinct mission. And it means that it's very hard to influence foundations because, again, they're not accountable to things. But I think I want to invite everyone in the room and everyone on the panel to think about philanthropic capital as kind of the riskiest kind of capital in a capital stack if you're thinking about doing a project. Because they don't have to have that same level of accountability, and because philanthropic dollars have no expectation of return. In fact, they have to be given out every year. It's tax policy. There's a certain amount of money that has to be granted out each year. That means that these dollars are looking for things to fund, and they very actively want to leverage public dollars. So it can be very hard for the Catalonia Fund to fund something that's never been done before because it's inherently risky to you. That being said, a foundation might take that risk and say, yeah, let's build this weird pocket park with different, you know, materials, and it's never been done before. You know, let's plant this type of native tree that's going to have all these different co-benefits, and maybe that's really risky to the government of Barcelona or Catalonia, but the foundation can do it, and if it doesn't work, that's fine. Pull it out, you know, redo it. But if it does work, then public dollars can follow behind that, and then actually turn that into like a bigger impact project. The other thing I want to mention is that philanthropy can also be used to fund not just projects, but also policies. So a lot of policies emerge from good research. Public dollars funding research can take a very long time to be deployed, and there's a lot of restrictions on them, and it can be, but a kind of tactical way to use or to work with foundations is to actually encourage them to fund rapid research projects that then can translate into good policies. And again, they can de-risk that for governments who aren't necessarily sure what the best policies are, especially in a space like climate adaptation, which is such a new field. So I'll leave it at that. I hope I kept to 5 minutes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I wonder if this innovative path that you were talking about, once successful, is scaled up to other public administrations or governments. That could be an interesting path to follow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sam. Okay, let's move to the second round of the panel. This one should be talking about governance, equity, and scaling up. Please stick to the 5 minutes. You are doing quite well so far, so thank you very much. And the first question is for Catalonia. We were talking about the climate fund, but beyond mobilizing funds, how does Catalonia ensure that climate fund investments deliver co-benefits, and moreover, how do you track and report these outcomes? Because this is always a tricky matter. Huh?
Yes, okay. Yes, the Catalan Climate Fund not only mobilize resources for to reduce carbon emissions and to adapt to climate change, but also ensures that these investments deliver benefits to society and the territory. This includes to improve quality air through projects that cut pollutants, pollutant emissions. For example, taking actions on sustainable mobility. We are doing a lot of things regarding this issue, and also on intensive livestock to emit less methane, but also less ammonia. I know that Lombardianas, we have the same problem. On industry, also helping them to use renewable energy in industrial processes, but also introducing new materials inside the process that emit less carbon emissions. We are paying with Climate Fund several research studies in this regard, because we have a lot of problems with emissions that come from industry, less problems that with transport, so mobility is one of our focus, but also industry. So we are working on quality air, but also we are promoting green infrastructures such as urban forests, green roof in public housing. We have a very nice project with this. We are working on we are putting money on ecological corridors too, and all of them promote also biodiversity because we are creating habitats. But this kind of green infrastructures also act as natural climate regulators. And to promote sustainable forest management is also an area where we are working very, very hard. We are doing relations with, we are acting as, we are doing public and private procurement in this, and we are acting on a private land forest, and companies are putting money to do sustainable forest management. Is a very interesting project too. And we are also supporting local government and small municipalities to benefit public communities, and especially public health, resilience, and climate justice. So, as you can see, working on several projects, always we find other areas that go to other, to other benefits that are not only to reduce carbon emissions and to adapt to climate change. And regarding how we ensure transparency and accountability, we do an annual report that is presented to the Commission of the Climate Fund. And in addition, we have a public website where we share all the information about all the projects that are receiving climate fund, money from the climate fund. And finally, we are currently considering to launch a communication campaign to increase public awareness and understanding on how we are using the money, because it's public money that comes from environmental taxes.
Thank you, Sonsoles. I think communication is paramount, and not only regarding accountability, but as well to to frame the state of mind. No. Okay. Thank you so much, Sonsoles. Okay, let's move to Scotland again, Gillian. What lessons can you share from Scotland's climate justice about how climate finance can be deployed in a way that is fair and just? Fairness and justice are very important, critical. And what learning can you take to national and international conversations on climate finance?
Thanks very much. So our Climate Justice Fund is based on the premise that climate change exacerbates existing inequalities. And the evidence backs that up every time. So our approach to the distribution of funding is we're aiming to tackle the structural inequalities that people face, such as income, wealth, gender, age, disability, and an indigenous status, because these can all exacerbate the impact of climate change and climate change-based events on communities. So our approach. Thank you. Our approach acknowledges that local communities need to be at the heart of determining how the finance is deployed and what the projects are that they need. It's very much a bottom-up approach. It's mostly the most effective approach as well, because if you're actually responding to need and actually involving those people in the decision-making process, so you're actually going to get a better outcome. So I'll give you some examples. We've got programs in East Africa, the Bay of Bengal, the Pacific, and we place women, indigenous people, young people, disabled people at the heart of those partnerships. As I mentioned earlier, we see that actually has the biggest impact, and that creates that transformational shift that require and builds more resilient communities, because these people are actually finding that they're actually really at the sharp end of all the impacts of climate change events. So if they're involved in the solutions, then you're getting better solutions. So I'll give two examples of that. Our Climate Just Communities programme in Rwanda, we established committees for women, giving a voice to women who had, women who actually had the solutions about how to actually deploy the money and how to get the biggest, I suppose, impact. Women were able to articulate their specific needs in an all-woman sort of environment as well. They had more gender-responsive climate solutions, water access, food security, energy, disaster resilience, where they have the biggest burden, and that had a more impact when they were actually part of the solutions being put forward. But we also want to mention as well, we also support young people in the communities we work in to advocate for their countries on climate action. And we also enable a lot of those young people to actually build up entrepreneurial skills and actually come forward with business solutions as well. We actually fund young people to go to COP, for example, and they get a seat at the table where the Scottish Government doesn't get a seat at the table. So that's, I think, very impactful. I mean, these will be, hopefully, I would imagine, the leaders of the future in those countries. So there's lots of important lessons that we can take to national and international conversations on climate finance. I want to say the one thing I think that is missing in a lot of the national responses is trust. Trust in those communities to know what's best for them. They're pretty hung up on, obviously when it's public money, you're pretty hung up on, like the accountability part of it. And, they're sort of ticking the boxes as how it's deployed and, all the rest of it. But when you're actually getting money directly into people's hand and you're trusting them to use it in the way that they need, then I think some of the structures in national governments don't allow for that. So I think that we've certainly got a lot of lessons to say, if you trust people, that money's not going to disappear into the ether. That's actually going to work harder than the money the way you're having to account for things more directly. Our loss and damage projects consolidated that position of a proportion of the international fund for responding to loss and damage needs to be ring-fenced to make finance directly available to communities. Grants, not loans, and in some cases cash actually going to individuals who are maybe creating a new business or rebuilding a part of their homes or their farms or whatever, and is actually building back better, and having that trust that that's actually going to be done. I don't think we've ever been proven wrong. The trust has been well placed and has actually made an impact. So we use participatory approaches. It's more than participatory. They're not participants, they're actually driving the projects. The people in the community are driving the projects. We are facilitating their driving of the projects, and it's actually having real meaningful impact in a way that I think a lot of programs that maybe come from national governments, with every layer of administration, money leaks out and doesn't actually get to the people. So that's the ethos of that. The scale for additional climate finance, mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage is absolutely stark. we're putting public money into this. It's not an easy conversation sometimes you have with your electorate. You know, it's always the area where, when things are happening within your own government, that you look to the, you know, is it the nice to have? But I have, and my predecessors in this role have kept this money. In fact, we've actually added to this money coming from the budget. But I think it's now time that we really need to actually be reaching out to philanthropists, private investment, to be able to build on the success we've had and actually crowd in that private finance. And certainly, I'm going to take back some ideas to Scotland based on what I've heard this morning.
Thank you, Gillian. Definitely, we would like to know more about this trusting the communities and this bottom-up process. No, it's very, very stimulating and interesting. We would like to know a little bit more about it, but not today. Anyway, let's move now to South Australia, Neil. Okay, what innovative tools or policy changes would you make? The biggest difference for scaling up climate finance at the state level? Are there regulatory reforms, public-private partnership models, maybe, or risk-sharing mechanisms that you think could be replicated in other regions? We would like to know a little bit more about it.
Okay, thank you for the question. I probably would take you on a little journey here on the narrative of sort of what happened in South Australia to explain how we've built our sort of base and legislation and plans. So first of all, you have got to have a strong fundamental. So we've got sun and wind, right? So that's pretty fundamental. Lots of land and lots of wind. We had a very visionary premier who several years ago said, I'm going to get out of coal, I'm going to close the stations, and he did. And I'm going to go all in on renewables. So he did that. And then we had the philanthropics who had a bet that they could build a big battery in 100 days. That was Musk and Atlassian, and they built it. Right? So we had this quite iconic battery, which was very big, and it was the first in the world at that time. But what we found was that it wasn't just being able to have the power for from a storm for an hour, like to keep the lights on. What we found is that the battery smoothed out the grid, because when you're changing from one energy to another, the price goes up and down, right? It's very clunky, particularly from coal or gas. So what it does is it smooths it out, because it goes into the battery and it smooths it out. And this was a huge benefit, both for the money in terms of savings, but also in having a very smooth system, right, in your grid. So that was a game changer for us. Right, so all right, this is fantastic. So all the households also decided, right, we're going to go solar panels. 50% of houses in South Australia have solar panels. 50%, over half. And about a third of them now have their own batteries. So they've gone all in. So that was the basis for us seeing how we can actually go down. So it was led by renewable energy. And then we started to look at all our others. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, we can get to net zero very quickly. So we've got a net zero by 2050, but we're now at sort of 60% now in this year, 60% below our emissions from 2005. So we're well on that way, on that path, led by the renewable energy. But we've got to bring down our emissions in transport, in agriculture, and all these others. So what we did is set targets for those as a legislative base. We do a climate risk assessment to say what's going to happen if we don't do these things, and we have a lot of droughts and floods and algae blooms and all sorts of sort of things coming down the road. And then we have a net zero strategy for the manufacturing. So all these basic plans that the government produces, and that's when the public come with you and then the investors come with you. So we have, it's not kind of, that's the story you have. So you just build on what's successful, right? And that we found that the public will come with us on this journey because they can see the benefit. And then we have the legislation and all those plans and strategies that get us there. And the investors say, oh, the government is really serious about this. It's not mucking around. We're in, right? So that's where we are. So we want to take the next step. Fingers crossed we're bidding for COP31 next year. So hopefully you can come to South Australia and see all this in action. And I can't promise you now, but I'm very, very hopeful that we will get it. But let's hope and see, and I'd like to bring you there as well. Thank you.
Good luck to you. Huh? Okay, thank you so much. It's been a very interesting experience that you framed for us. Okay, now let's move to Lombardy. You said before that Lombardy has I think 1,500 municipalities, which is a big region with some disparities between urban and rural areas. How do you ensure that climate finance benefits both major cities and smaller municipalities across Lombardy? And what governance mechanisms or participatory processes have you adopted to guarantee this fair distribution?
Grazie Marco. Grazie Mark per questa interessante domanda, però ti prego dobbiamo organizzare un altro evento perché non è possibile esaurire tutte le informazioni ma sta uscendo comunque una cosa e voglio dirla prima di rispondere alla tua domanda. Noi qui siamo a trattare un tema che ha un'unica bandiera e quindi sono veramente orgoglioso di essere qui oggi e condividere questi aspetti con i miei nuovi amici a questo tavolo. Ma aggiungerei un'altra cosa: non dobbiamo dimenticarci di ascoltare, siamo all'interno di un'università, i giovani. Tanti spunti che a me arrivano tramite mail, tramite WhatsApp, con tutti i metodi, i social e quant'altro, arrivano dai giovani e siamo in un luogo preposto per i giovani e quindi dobbiamo lavorare per loro ma ascoltarli prima di tutto. Tanti spunti appunto, confermo, arrivano proprio da loro. Arrivo alla domanda. Sì, siamo una regione con alcune disparità dal punto di vista proprio strutturale, rurale e proprio prima di venire qui a New York ho partecipato a una riunione di agricoltori che mi dicevano: Presidente, dobbiamo investire sulla pianta che è il pioppo. Una pianta molto semplice che viene utilizzata comunque per fare come legname per costruire mobili, ma ha delle caratteristiche incredibili, assorbe una quantità di CO2, di anidride carbonica incredibile, riesce a mitigare il terreno perché riesce a drenare l'acqua, quindi nelle zone golenali vicino ai tanti fiumi che abbiamo possono aiutare questi pioppeti, queste coltivazioni, a far drenare ulteriormente l'acqua ed evitare le esondazioni, che invece in questi giorni, se avete visto i telegiornali, i mass media ne hanno parlato anche a Milano. E quindi dobbiamo veramente pensare a queste zone rurali. Come lo stiamo facendo? Torno un po' alla risposta che ho dato prima. In questa legge regionale si parla anche tantissimo di incentivazioni verso il mondo agricolo. Perché? Perché loro stessi non soltanto stanno investendo tanto, parlavamo prima con gli amici della Catalonia, ad esempio, per trasformare quelli che sono gli escrementi animali e le lavorazioni della parte diciamo legata all'agricoltura in prodotti che diventano poi biogas, biometano, quindi ecco che da un problema diventa un'opportunità, però hanno bisogno di investimenti e sono tanti e noi come regione stiamo all'interno della legge trovando la modalità proprio per arrivare incontro anche a queste zone che sono tante, sono rurali, sono ancora a vocazione legate al mondo dell'agricoltura, però hanno assolutamente bisogno di forti investimenti e da soli non ce la fanno, hanno per forza bisogno delle istituzioni, dove non arriva il governo deve arrivare la regione e aiutiamo e i comuni e aiutiamo anche indirettamente anche le aziende agricole facenti parte dei vari piccoli comuni che da soli ovviamente non ce la farebbero. Io poi lascerò
in forma cartacea perché diventa un po' più simbolica, un po' vecchio stile, old style, ma poi ti farò avere Mark anche in forma digitale, non soltanto il nostro programma regionale per il clima e le energie e l'ambiente, ma ti farò avere anche la legge nostra in modo tale che rimanga un po' come suggello di questa giornata così importante, così piacevole passata con voi, ma che è la prima di una lunga serie, sono certo. Grazie ancora.
Grazie, grazie. Lombardy, okay, grazie Alessandro. Let's move to our final panelists, RCC, Sam. Okay, many regions struggle to prepare bankable projects and to navigate complex finance architecture. From systems perspective, what new models of collaboration between philanthropy, governments, and multilateral funds do you see as most promising to accelerate subnational climate investment?
Yeah, thank you. That word "new" is important because I think we are experimenting with and trying lots of new things, and I think one of the, as this kind of space of adaptation, resilience, and kind of building off the good work that's been done on mitigation and the funding that's gone into that, there is no kind of universal solution to this. And I think every government, every one of their partners needs to go into this with some humility and some expectation that there's going to be some mistakes and that we haven't totally figured it out. So it's actually an exciting time to do this work. And it's, coming back to my earlier comments, it's a great time to work with philanthropy that can help governments take and absorb some of that risk so that they're not the only ones holding the bag, as it were. So I would say one of the things that we've been a part of with the government of Catalonia, with South Australia, and with 14 other subnational governments is creating something called the Mediterranean Climate Action Partnership. And my organization, RCC, is the secretariat for that. It's the first bioregional network of subnational governments. So what binds all these regions together is a common shared climate reality. Mediterranean regions are population centers, huge population centers. They're the centers for agriculture. It's kind of where humans evolved and came from, and we keep returning to these places through travel because they're wonderful places to be. They have great wine, they have great food. Because of that, so much is at risk. And in particular, drought, wildfire, heat are these like very pronounced climate risks that all Mediterranean regions face. And I want to be clear, I'm not just talking about the Mediterranean basin, North Africa, the Middle East, Southern Europe. I'm talking about the kind of climate designation of Mediterranean. So it includes parts of Mexico, parts of Chile, South Africa, lots of Australia. 3 different regions in Australia are part of our network. And actually, with philanthropic funding, we're able to bring these different players together who otherwise might not have these relationships or have these spaces to exchange knowledge and develop these better projects and better ideas. So we're kind of in our second year, and the whole partnership has been funded by philanthropy, which is a different model than a lot of these networks traditionally have done. And actually, we were able to move more quickly and launch more quickly because we used philanthropic dollars. And now, headed into year 3, the governments are going to start putting money into the effort and sort of building their own kind of investment in the partnership. But it's been really delightful to see through this partnership, at the very technical level, at that kind of scientific and technical experts within government really coming together through working groups that we support and really exchanging practical knowledge that's now leading to very tangible actions. So I think, it's not, there will, of course, will have to be things that are done kind of government to government, and they all have to go on their own journey. But I do believe we can move more quickly and take better action if we work together and we're sharing knowledge actively. And I think it adds a layer of complexity to an already complex space of work, but I think it actually accelerates things if it's done at the right scale and at the right level. And I think philanthropic funding is key to those types of partnerships because they just won't come together without that kind of flexible funding source.
Thank you, Sam. That has been more or less all of it, but we're out of time, honestly. But we will open the floor to maybe 3 questions, if you like, and then we will finish with some final remarks from our Secretary General. And in order to open the floor, since we have such a distinguished panelists here, I would like to give the opportunity to our dear friend Jordan from Regions 4 to react to what has been said here. But please be brief. You have like 3 minutes. Is that okay for you? Thank you so much. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you for being here on behalf of Regions 4. It's a pleasure to have you here. And keep that question in mind, please. Key messages. And is there any other question on the air? Somebody? Okay. Anybody?
Kind of building off what Jordan said, I was wondering, Sam and others could speak to a little bit about, you talked about philanthropic capital being nimble and quick to deploy, and governments being typically slower and more bureaucratic. How, through the MCAP program, have you managed to make that work? I'm thinking specifically about some of the project acceleration you're doing in the different projects.
Okay, thank you. Second question. And is there another question from the audience? 1, 2, 3? No? Okay, sold. Who wants to? Yeah, Neil?
I'll go first because
Okay.
I might have to run in a minute.
Please,
so,
be brief.
Yeah. Thanks for the question about the adaptation and philanthropics and investors and others. So we've just had a terrible algae bloom in South Australia, which is an impact of marine heat and nutrients and a flood we had a couple of years ago. And it's quite shocking. And that's had a huge impact on our whole communities, both living in the coast, but also just for the whole of Adelaide who'd love to go to the beach, right? So they can't go to the beach now because there's dead fish and there's foam, and it's actually quite unpleasant. So the whole of that adaptation now is like, it's in everyone's mindset, right? So what we're doing now is saying, okay, this is the impact of climate, right? So you've got to take it seriously. But what we're seeing now is that the coastal communities and all the fishing industries and all the investors in there and the real estate are now saying, oh, okay, we've actually got to now take this very seriously and start investing in adaptation matters. Whether that's a seawall, whether it's an early warning system, if it's like ways to move this algae away. So we're now seeing that come to fruition. But it's taken an event, unfortunately, and that's often the case. But I would say I think it's the insurance industry is really also starting to say, okay, this is a distinct problem, and because the premiums are going way too high beyond the household's budgets. So they're actually now working out, okay, what are we going to do? because there's people just not being insured at all anymore. So I think in the financial one, that's kind of the place we have to go. And in the mitigation I talked about before, I mean, that's all the investors in the renewable energy. On the MCAP stuff, I'm not quite sure. I mean, need Sam to answer that. But from a government perspective, we need help to get the philanthropists. So the more practical you can be, make the business case very clear, not too fluffy, and be very detailed on what the value proposition is, and then they'll come.
Thank you, Neil. I think Sonsoles wanted to react as well, and maybe Gillian afterwards, okay?
Okay, yes, I want to answer Jordan, because for us, a very important thing, and Neil said the same before, is that regions have to have plans, strategies to give credibility to private sector. And I want to put an example in Catalonia. We have a very intensive industry that is emitting a lot of carbon emissions, and they are very worried about how to lower carbon emissions because we have the objectives of Europe, but and carbon neutrality in 2050. And they came to me because in my general direction, we have also environmental quality, so we give the permissions, the environmental permissions for industries, because they wanted to have they wanted to be sure that we were going to give, support to a carbon storage. With Barbara Fraschetta in Lombardy, we were talking about it too, because you have the same investment. And we put the carbon storage mechanisms, inside our mitigation plan, the Catalan mitigation plan. So now they are mobilizing 4,500 million to invest in carbon storage. And so our industry is safe, because sure that they are going to arrive to reduce carbon emissions, but carbon emissions that come from process, not for using fossil fuel. So I agree with Neil that to give credibility is very, very important to attract private investment, and to have money from philanthropy. MCAP is an incredible example also for European countries, because we have a very strict law, the public procurement law and others. We have to give a lot of transparency, and for us it's very difficult to use money from philanthropy. So we need an alliance or other mechanism, because the money from philanthropy, it can't arrive directly, because for us we can't do it because of our framework of European laws.
Okay, thank you, Sonsoles. Let's do one thing. First Gillian, then Alessandro, finally Sam, okay? And then we will close the act with the final remarks of our Secretary General. Thank you.
I think what I would like to say is that we're missing a trick if we don't involve subnational governments in terms of an offer to the private investors or philanthropists, because I think we're always waiting for signals from national governments to have agreements on things, and we'll wait forever. So I think what we have to do is we have to bang together as much as possible. That's why Regions 4 and Under 2 coalition are so important. We need to be, someone mentioned fluffy. It needs to, fluffy, forget fluffy. We need to actually have an actual offer, an actual mechanism as well, because I think that I'm getting the feeling even from this week that there's private investment ready to go. They just need to know the mechanism. I mean, even within Scotland, we've got sort of areas in which we've got real potential, but I'm putting together our climate change plan. We've got peatland restoration opportunities. We're effectively the lungs of Europe, and we could be more healthy lungs if we restore all the peatland. And the amount of carbon sequestration and emissions reduction associated with that was mind-blowing. We've got heat networks in all our cities that we want to offer investment opportunities to. We've got blue carbon stores opportunities we want to offer programmes for woodland planting, coastal erosion protection, flood defences, and that's just within Scotland. So we actually bring together all those subnational governments and see all the projects, investable opportunities for people that want to make money, but also philanthropic opportunities for people who don't really mind not making money, but actually just want to do good things. Public money will not be able to do it alone. We need to be able to crowd that investment in, and we can't wait on national governments to provide the mechanisms. Subnational, we can do things quicker, quicker, more agile, and we're actually going to do most. Subnational governments are actually going to do most when it comes to actually reducing emissions. So, what are you waiting for?
Thank you. Alessandro, please.
Ma l'opportunità è quella di dare un messaggio, insomma, finale, è assolutamente ghiotta, e quindi la colgo. Il claim, diciamo, lo slogan di questa Climate Week è stato Power On, e io direi che nulla di più chiaro è in questo messaggio, e noi dobbiamo portarci a casa. Io mi porterò in Italia questo messaggio, perché i governi devono dimostrare due cose fondamentali: più umiltà e maggiore consapevolezza, perché quello che oggi stiamo leggendo come un problema probabilmente potrebbe veramente diventare un'opportunità se affrontato in maniera equilibrata, ma la ricerca dell'equilibrio è sempre un esercizio molto difficile. Non c'è niente da fare, sembrerebbe la cosa più semplice, ma in realtà è la cosa più difficile. Questo impone le istituzioni che abbiano l'umiltà, ripeto, di scendere anche a patti con il mondo del privato, col mondo della filantropia, e avere il desiderio di raggiungere un obiettivo che è un obiettivo comune, perché se lo raggiungiamo avremo una migliore salute, perché di questo poi dobbiamo arrivare a parlare, perché questo è il tema fondamentale, e migliore salute per noi, ma soprattutto pensiamo anche a chi arriverà dopo di noi. E io lo faccio tutti i giorni pensando a mia figlia, e guardo Jordan che di figlie ne ha 3, e quindi dobbiamo assolutamente lavorare anche noi con grande attenzione, ma ripeto, grande umiltà e consapevolezza. Quindi power on.
Thank you. Sam.
Thank you. I mean, not much to add on top of these great comments. Coming back to Jordan's question, and I'll try to answer Laura's at the same time, because it's basically like, what's the case for subnational governments and what's the case for adaptation, and how do you kind of work with philanthropy and other types of partners to do that? I mean, the case for subnational governments is really clear to me as someone that's worked a lot with national governments and a lot with different types of subnational governments, cities, counties, states, provinces, etc. Simply put, subnational governments own the problem in a way that national governments don't. They actually manage the infrastructure and systems that are most at threat, and they're much closer to the real lived experience of their constituents. And it kind of depoliticizes the issue in a lot of ways, because it's actually directly impacting these people. It's like they have to deal with this at the ballot box every 4 years or so, and it is actually affecting directly these people's lives, whether it's heat or storms or whatnot. And so they don't have the luxury of being able to play politics with a lot of these issues. They have to solve these problems, otherwise they will lose their jobs, if it's working properly. Politics, that is, which it rarely is. But so to me, I think the value proposition for partnering with subnational governments is they're actually going to be deploying the public dollars and the resources and the regulatory authorities in a way that's going to more directly impact people's lives, and that should be what philanthropies care about. So they could spend a lot of money trying to influence national policy, which is like this, almost across the board, or they could actually get much closer to the problem and partner with subnational governments. And I'll make one point on kind of how to partner and work, and we're trying to do this with MCAP and with other things that we do, is subnational governments, I think, have a unique opportunity to actually inform and shape philanthropic strategies for that same reason of what I just said, that they are actually closer to the problem. And I said all that stuff about foundations being unaccountable and they can kind of do whatever they want, but most of them want to do good. They want to have that positive impact. And so subnational governments can actually have a convening and strategy and agenda setting role for foundations. But it takes time, it takes leadership, and it's not going to happen overnight. You actually have to develop these relationships with the program officers, with board members, with leadership, and actually co-develop strategies with them that are meaningful for their communities. And different foundations will be interested in different types of impacts. But subnational governments can actually be that convener and get everyone at the table and say, this is what we want to do together, and this is what we want to do with you. And that's not a muscle that most governments know how to exercise that often. And a lot of what we do at RCC is kind of walk with them on that journey and help them kind of build those relationships and build that trust. So thanks very much for the questions.
Okay, thank you very much. And now the final remarks from our Secretary General.
Muy rápidamente, porque estamos, yo creo que fuera de horario. Jordan hacía una pregunta y yo creo que Sam la ha respondido perfectamente. Yo la voy a resumir en una palabra, cuando hay que convencer a la filantropía, porque hay que colaborar con los gobiernos subnacionales. Proximidad. Yo creo que esta es la palabra que resume la colaboración. Proximidad. Problema, gestión, proximidad. Y luego hay que solucionar un tema de la colaboración público-privada, sobre todo en el sistema público europeo, que choca con las leyes de contratos públicos, la rendición de cuentas de cualquier tipo de gobierno. Y la colaboración público-privada habrá que convencer a la Comisión Europea que encima aplica criterios ya en estos próximos ejercicios de estabilidad presupuestaria para no aumentar el déficit, y por tanto hay que encontrar el mecanismo justo para que no te compute como déficit algunas de las inversiones que hay que hacer. No sé, España, ley de mecenazgo 2002. Los temas que estamos tratando hoy aquí probablemente no estaban en el primer orden de la agenda. Y la colaboración de mecenazgo va orientada básicamente a las políticas del tercer sector, con un ámbito muy social, y hay que modificar la legislación nacional y europea, yo estoy hablando del caso europeo, para que el cuarto sector, en este caso ambiental, forme parte también de las políticas de mecenazgo, en este caso europeo, de filantropía, para ajustar los mecanismos de la colaboración público-privada. Si no, vamos a topar con la ley de contratos, con la política fiscal de estabilización en la Unión Europea, y se hará difícil, ¿no?, estos mecanismos. Hay que encontrar la fórmula que permita esta colaboración. En otro orden de cosas, ¿no?, desde mi departamento, que es muy amplio, sí que estamos encontrando las fórmulas que habrá que aplicar en estos campos para que la colaboración público-privada en la financiación de grandes infraestructuras no compute como déficit a nivel de la Unión Europea. Es un sistema en el que el win-win no siempre beneficia al privado, sino que el riesgo sea tanto del público como del privado. Pero esto aplicado a las políticas ambientales es un poco más complejo, habrá que darle una vuelta para que permita esta colaboración de una manera efectiva. Yo creo que el panel ha sido muy interesante, necesitaríamos un par de horas más para seguir profundizando, pero el tiempo es el tiempo. Muchas gracias.
Okay, thank you so much. Just a couple of things. Thank you for being here. Thank you to our lovely panelists. We are super proud that have you here. We have enjoyed a lot. I hope you did too. Please don't forget to return the translation device to Gisela over there. There's plenty of food outside, so if you have a bag or you're just hungry, please help yourself, okay? A round of applause, please, for our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.